Hi, this is lesson 7 in our mini program, Performing Under Pressure. And this lesson is on control. And boy, is control a difficult thing. On one hand, control is a wonderful thing because it makes us feel confident to take action on certain things. Let's say you're a skier, you go down a slope. If it's a really steep slope, it's nice to feel like you're in control of things. And so control on one hand can seem like a good thing, and it can be a good thing. But on the other hand, control sometimes also shows up in the form of fear. And we're trying to manage something that is inherently unmanageable. And in those kinds of instances, it's not very helpful. But I found that when I get really curious about where I need control, I typically notice things that are important to me, important in life. And I also notice areas where it would be helpful to have more freedom. It shows up in professional relationships and in personal relationships or intimate relationships, typically. And when I find ways to let go of control, some things typically happen. New doors open. I discover things that I didn't see before. Things typically just flow more. Sometimes when we let go of control, we realize that a relationship needs to die and new ones need to flower, or we realize that it's not up to us to make something succeed, or so on and so forth. So it can be really scary to let go of control, but when you do it, I really found that it's always brought something positive to my life, and it's helped me take action in areas that are important to me. When you let go of control, you typically listen more as well. And so letting go of control is about noticing what is actually important as opposed to my idea about what's important. I find that letting go of control truly is a kind of surrendering. It's a kind of being curious about what it is I haven't noticed about a given situation, and then be willing to receive whatever is at the other end. Let's say you're in a relationship, you're afraid about how a person is going to react to something, and you kind of trying to control that reaction through the conversation as opposed to letting it just happen. In that instance, the other person will probably feel that you're not listening to them as much as you would otherwise. And so some of your fears about what's difficult in that relationship might even arise when it didn't have to. So when we're under pressure, letting go of control can be a really scary thing. But I find that if we find the courage to let go of control, new things will happen. It might even be the thing that saves us. And so there are 3 things that have saved me in dealing with pressure when it comes to control. And the first one is noticing fear and then finding ways to take action without feeling in control first. So I notice fear. I realize I'm not too confident about this area, but instead of trying to gain control before I do something, I remind myself that I don't need to feel in control in order to take action. And typically it's actually the other way around. We don't feel in control until we've learned to take action, until we've taken a lot of action. So reminding myself of that can be a really powerful thing. The second thing is asking myself, what is the worst that can happen? It's such a basic thing. I think most of us have learned it at some point in our life, or someone has told us what's the worst that can happen. For me, it was my father. I remember asking me this the first time. And typically the worst that can happen is much less worse than what we make it up to be, or how we feel about it. And so kind of like sketching that out can release a little bit of fear and our need for being in control. The third thing that saved me is asking myself, what is it that I can let go of? It's a little bit more of an abstract thing, but control is typically related to an idea of things having to be in a certain way. And so asking myself, what is it I can let go of, can help kind of like release and untighten that sense of need for control. Yeah, so there is an exercise as well for this topic, and the exercise is how control has limited and served me. The thing about control is that if we're trying to diminish control, it might even be another way of trying to be in control. So the best thing we can do is to create awareness around it so that there is some space where we can kind of like create the space for us to let go of control. And so the best way of creating space is to honor how being in control or wanting to be in control have served us in a certain area, and then also notice how it's actually kept us from achieving the things that are important to us. So in this exercise, find an area that is important to you and where you know control plays a role, so that you can shift yourself from being at the mercy of control and basically your ego to being in the actual driver's seat. So what is it that's important to you? An area where control might have played an unproportionately big role in your life, and where it would actually be helpful to loosen that grip a little bit. So the first part of the exercise is choose your area and find 3 ways that keeping control has actually served you. So you've selected an area where you are unproportionately trying to be in control. And then you ask yourself, being in control in this area of my life, how has that served me? How has it actually been a good thing that I've made an effort to try and be in control? And then in the same area, you ask yourself, how has trying to be in control not served me? How has it actually kept me from getting the things that I want, kept me from getting the things that are important for me? So you list another 3 items against that question. And then once you've answered both questions, sit with that for a little bit and feel into the fact that it's actually both served you and kept you from achieving things that are important to you or getting things that are important to you. And then finish up with the question of, now, how can I let go of control and surrender to whatever will happen? So the last question is probably the most difficult one, but think about it actually even practically. Within that area, what can you actually do now that would show for yourself and for the people involved that you are kind of loosening your need for control a little bit? And then make a commitment to make it happen and to practice. And if you have the courage to walk through fear, you can go back and do one of the other exercises on dealing with fear. But if you let go of control like this, I assure you that it will open up some new doors to things that you haven't been able to have happen before, but that probably will happen more by itself now. So good luck and be courageous, and I'm sure you will succeed if you do that.